Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had time to grab a nice sandwich to meet some nice designers and to connect. During the break, we heard some of you had a question on if we are going to share the presentations we saw this morning and we will see in the afternoon. Yes, we will share. Most of the talks will be available in our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see it, and also some other highlights that we will prepare for you. So don't worry if you did not, if you are not able to see the entire presentation, you can still do it later on. We will let you know also via email, by the way. So we still have, well, welcome back. We still have some speakers for this afternoon. We will have Paul, Diego, and Dan lined up. One break still available, and also for the ones in the room, a reminder, there will be a tour at the end where you can actually go visit the Rijksmuseum. I think it's good to remind you about that, because I find it really cool. So, next to the next talk, our next speaker is going to talk about the importance of zooming out as designers. He has been designing with his team a bicycle sharing service. And together they have been navigating through several mobility services. Our next speaker has 15 years of experience, over 15 years of experience working in strategy, design, UX, and has experience from mobility to finance. On another note, if you are a musician or if you play any type of instrument, you may want to meet this next speaker in the next break. He will have a lot to tell you. So please welcome Paul Versteeg to the stage.
Thank you so much.
Have fun.
Hey everyone, had a nice lunch? I did, yeah. So let me start this up. So my talk, the title is A Wall Becomes a Bridge. And this is in a way a poetic way of saying breaking a barrier. And starting off by the company I work for. Actually, I'm one of the founders of this company, and it's called fresk.digital. And what we do, we help our clients from business concept to meaningful digital products. And I find it very important to mention that, because the meaningful part, that's what it's all about being a designer. So not just creating anything, but creating something that has true value. And that is, in a way, sort of the red thread throughout this presentation. As mentioned, this is me. I'm one of the founders of this wonderful company. I'm the head of design strategy. I have a background in interaction design, a little bit of service design. But I have a sort of second ambition, and that is I'm a drummer as well. So I'm a musician. And to give a glimpse right after the lunch, I have a short clip to give an impression on how that looks like. So this is not going to be a lecture about music, rest assured. But in me drumming, I enjoyed it so much. And for this type of drumming, I look to other artists, obviously, in style, in actually small details on how to hold your sticks, or what is a nice rhythms just around the drums. And for that, I came across a jazz musician called Scott. He is a multi-Grammy nominee, and well, as mentioned, he's a jazz drummer, and he plays stuff like this. So very passionate, as you can see. He's a true jazz drummer. He has the traditional grip. Any drummers in the room? No, too bad. Okay, well, I'll lose some of the drum jokes. Okay. So this drummer, Scott, he had a great first album. Expectations were very high for him to create his next album. And then what he saw around him is sort of this record company forcing upon him a certain style, a certain way of playing, and that in that way in a way he felt trapped. So imagine this is him, and all of that context around him, sort of that created some sort of boundary for him. In a way, it's a wall for not being able to create great work. So record companies had certain expectations. The jazz style he was playing, it's kind of a modern, contemporary style. So how many tracks should be on the album, certain music trends he wants to incorporate, the composition throughout all of the album itself, all of these expectations. And over time, this sort of really trapped him. So he felt really trapped, and all these boundaries became a box that didn't really help him become creative. So he tried, and then he looked at his own playing, and what that meant was he started just copying stuff. And I'm sure some of you recognize that of course you should copy what others do in order to learn what is the right design for your situation. That's not new, but at the same time it's a sort of it does not help you to create really meaningful work. So maybe as an example, I stole these slides as well. So this is exactly the copying that someone else does. But when you create a website for a client, this could be a template, a WordPress template, not looking very pretty. And the risk of that is someone else changes the image and some colors, and you get the same thing. And this is what we see all around us every day. And this is another example. So client probably wants some blue with some highlights, and but another client once had that same briefing, and it's not that distinguished anymore. Same example with the trend of having figurative elements in a site. I think it looks good, but you're not the only one if you would use that. So you get this type of stuff. It's almost the same, and we don't want that. We don't want it as designers, and we don't want that for our clients. I actually encountered this example, not for these two slides, but I was working for an insurance company, and at the same time, I was working for a second insurance company. And this talk was about creating a new homepage. So we were in this booth and discussing the briefing, and at that time, he pulled out a screen and it says, well, what we actually want is something more like this. And then I saw the screen that I actually created. And he simply wanted the same thing. There was a tough discussion there. But so, bottom line, don't look too much at all of these dribble, or don't copy too much. Use it as inspiration, and then sort of take your own, make your own version of it. All this copying does make you wonder what it takes to create truly meaningful work. And I think I have a sort of an entrance into doing that. And the secret of all of this is to zoom out. And I found a number of examples in art and other creative industries that I find very inspiring. And these are various examples of zooming out. So the first one, I think you all know this, but this is the Escher drawing. And why it's so interesting is he made it very, very hard for himself to create a self-portrait. But it's not just a self-portrait, it's self-portrait in a mirror, and it's a spherical mirror as well. So that makes it very hard to actually draw that same room in the right perspective. And there's an additional element why it's sort of zooming out in a way, is he plays with the fourth wall perspective. So you as a viewer of this piece of art, you could almost imagine that this hand is your own hand, but it's his hand. So are you him? It's sort of mind-blowing, but I like that part. So it's not just a drawing; it's a highly skilled piece of art in that way. Another example.
We begin with a scene 1 meter wide, which we view from just 1 meter away. Now, every 10 seconds, we will look from 10 times farther away, and our field of view will be 10 times wider. This square is 10 meters wide, and in 10 seconds, the next square will be 10 times as wide. Our picture will center on the picnickers, even after they've been lost to sight. 100 meters wide, the distance a man can run in 10 seconds. Cars crowd the highway, power boats lie at their docks. The colorful bleachers are Soldiers Field. This square is 1 kilometer wide, 1,000 meters. The distance a racing car can travel in 10 seconds. We see the great city on the lake shore. 10 to the 4th meters, 10 kilometers. The distance a supersonic airplane can travel in 10 seconds. We see first the rounded end of Lake Michigan, then the whole Great Lake. 10 to the 5th meters, the distance an orbiting satellite covers in 10 seconds. Long parades of clouds, the day's weather in the Middle West. 10 to the 6th, a 1 with 6 zeros, 1 million meters. Soon the Earth will show as a solid sphere. We are able to see the whole Earth now, just over a minute along the journey.
So this movie is actually a little bit longer, but you get the point. It's literally about zooming out. And why that is important is that it makes you realize that all of these tiny little details we put into the design, there is always a bigger context. And when you zoom out, there is even a bigger context of what you're actually creating. So, and I think this image or this video illustrates that in a good way. Last example, that's about a different perspective of zooming out, and that's on a band called OK Go. Anyone know that? Great videos. But this video is about a relationship gone bad, and that is the reason for that is in this relationship, these people have a different perspective on reality, and I think they visualize that in a good way. Here we go. In preparing this, I saw a video of the making of. I definitely recommend it because all of the painting, obviously, on the writings on the wall, that's actually, well, they used beamers in that whole scene and then sort of started painting it. It's a meticulous job. It's, yeah, I think very cool. But it shows showing a different perspective and that way zooming out. I thought these were interesting examples for zooming out. So then back to Kendrick. He's still in his box. And what we have learned is, I think, he should zoom out. And, well, spoiler alert, he did. So he looked outside of the box he was in, all of the expectations from the record companies and what to make of that album in a certain jazz style. And he said, okay, well, what are the things that are bounding me at this point in time? And this talk is about recognizing what these items are, what these squares are as a designer. For each of our work in different projects, these are different, but I can imagine, especially in my line of work, I see maybe a customer journey, some digital touch points, backstage processes, support processes, and data dependencies are elements that are bounding me. And I found out that understanding all of these boundaries can really help you zoom out and create better work. And in order to do that, we created a framework. We could use another framework, right? And that framework consists of a human aspect, of course. We have human-centered designers at our company. Business, because we are creating a business value, so that's a crucial element in here. And data. We need validation, we need proof that the idea that we have on human and business and then the solution, that it is actually a solution. So how can user experience insights break a barrier? Well, the answer is to zoom out. And the interesting part, it looks a lot like the process that Carrie Matheson went through in Homeland. So she had all of that research, and what we actually created in this framework is a way to organize all of those different findings. Who is that Adrian Brody? Well, in the end, she created this crazy wall of insights, and why this is interesting is that it has all of these elements in here, but the insight came to her because she ordered it in this particular way. So in the end, what happens in 2009, that was the key. Spoiler alert again. So I'll show you what we have done, because obviously I want to show you our framework. And this is in no way new, so don't expect any sort of new things. It's just what we did with it. I find so very inspiring to talk to you about. So we have this framework to bring research into context, and that framework consists of two main elements: the perspectives. So for the interaction designers and the customer journey, obviously, and the digital touchpoints are the foundation of this framework, with the addition of backstage processes, sales support processes, and data dependencies as important perspectives. At the horizontal axis, we have obviously the customer lifecycle. We've seen them in different talks already. So the before, during, after, nothing new there. And then to put that all together, we create our research framework. And how we should use that is to, just as Carrie in her, sitting in her room, you should plot all of the different experiences, all of the different things that you know from a business perspective, from a customer perspective, and also what you found out, what certain backstage processes or opportunities are. You should map that into this framework. Again, you must recognize this, obviously, but the gold is in the top layer. So then you have this mapping of what you feel is the truth, only what to do with that. That's the hard part. And that's where the design areas come in. So you don't have to focus on everything, because it's probably different for each client. You just need to focus on, okay, what does that mean for this particular client, and what are the design areas? So what brings value? That's what your true job is. In that way, the framework is a tool, and the actual value for the client and your work is actually to identify these design areas. This sounds maybe a little bit vague, and I'm going to show you how we did that. And I'm going to explain that a little bit by using the example of shared mobility. Why we think at fresk.digital, why this is so interesting, is that it has a perspective of digital. So you need to have an app, obviously, to unlock a bike or a scooter. Or you have the physical element in there as well, because, well, riding the bike or the scooter, that's the physical experience. And these cannot be separated. So the shared mobility experience has these two elements in there. And when thinking about it, it also has a third perspective, and that is the social perspective. So people don't always like all of these bikes everywhere. So there's an important element to take into account there as well. We started researching, and I'm sure you recognize it. You start Googling and you find certain inspirational videos. And I would like to show you two examples of what I think is, in a way, zooming out of the perspective of shared mobility. And the first is using shared mobility in New York.
Oh my God! How long have you been doing the city bike stuff?
Since they came out like 10 years ago. We're just having fun.
So I borrowed this video from Casey Neistat. This one is the latest vlogs. He used this, but to show how crazy New York is. But he obviously they use shared mobility bikes in a whole different way. In a different way that the makers of this service couldn't have foreseen. And another video, which is also in a way zooming out, and that's not zooming out. Sorry, that's zooming out from a local perspective. So these are bikes from London, but they are not used in London.
24 hours.
3, 2, 1, go.
Watching this, we are not stealing your bikes. Mate, I still can't believe you've got 2 Boris bikes in the middle of the French Alps. It's going to be interesting with 3 gears. Yeah, I don't know about this seat, man. Look at this seat. I hope my brakes work. The Ryan for when the Tour comes up here in the summer. Top of the Alpe d'Huez. The most iconic climb in the Tour de France. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gosh.
24 hours later, we're back at Naval Road, Blackwall, in London. This bike has been to the top of Alpe d'Huez today, and now it's back in London.
So that was not supposed to happen, but they did anyway. I heard their license, or what do you call it? So they weren't allowed to use bikes anymore, at least on that account. But yeah, I like it. That's the nice thing about. Sort of, I think my work or the profession is, in order to dive into shared mobility, for instance, you really sort of come across these nice examples of how people are actually using that service. And that's not always how you would expect it to be. So I think very interesting. Moving forward, we tested bikes, not in this specific way, but a client of ours asked us to map out the experience that they currently have and do suggestions on improvements for their UI. So with this knowledge of shared mobility, we happily accepted that challenge, and this was for Blue Bike. I'm not sure if you know Blue Bike, but if you know Ovifiets, it's more or less the same, only in Belgium. They're a little bit smaller, but it's the same concept. So you won't have free-floating bikes, so bikes roaming out everywhere. You have just the stations, and you can get bikes over there. And to do that research, we had 3 phases, as most research has. Before the ride, during the ride, and after the ride. So what we did before the ride is we created a plan. And so this case was about Blue Bike. And then we thought, okay, what other shared mobility brands have a similar service or are related in some way to what Blue Bike does. So that was the first challenge, to zoom out and see what broader perspective we could use. And secondly, what scenarios are relevant. So not like the Boris bike example or the City Bike Boys example. We wanted to test the bikes in an actual situation. So going to a client meeting or to an appointment somewhere, you really needed to be there. It needed to be real, because only then you can check and experience the true value. So that's the research plan, and then we came to the conclusion that we wanted to actually experience these bikes. So obviously Ovifiets, because that is very much similar. HTM, that's only in The Hague. And we have a couple of electrified versions as well. And that's because Blue Bike has the ambition to also include electric bikes, just as Ovifiets recently started off in Drieberg as a pilot. And a number of other things. Also Felix, they don't have the bikes, but they do have the scooters to include in a way, what is different in a scooter situation from a bike situation. Yeah, so we tested these, And obviously in the before, during, and after experience. And we sort of kept track of everything we experienced by using a questionnaire. So that's very, very basic, but it does help to sort of input all of those experiences that you have. So you would obviously take a selfie of you on the bike, but also is the saddle nice? Did the app fail? How did the payment go through? Is the account making process, was that good? Yes or no? And that helped us actually to map out. And well, yeah, we tested other things. Yes, we did. Maybe the least interesting thing, but I noticed that the bell on the tier bike has it on the left, and I'm used the other bike. No, sorry, it was the other way around. So one of the bikes, the Go sharing, was on the right, and then the other ones are on the left. So as a designer, I think, why would that be? But well, so we tested the bells, not the most interesting part, but I just wanted to show you. But mostly the experience on the bike itself. This one was an important one, how to lock this bike. So you would place it at your appointment, and then are you allowed to leave it there, or do you still pay if it's just waiting for you to return? In one instance, I wanted to lock the bike, but then the app crashed. There was not Donkey Republic, by the way. But yeah, but you're still paying for it, so how does that work? So it's interesting too, as a sort of first-timer experiencing this service, and then overall laying each of these experiences right next to each other to learn about how certain decisions were made in this process. And as mentioned, the whole onboarding part, so finding a bike, registering for an account, that's a big part of the whole experience. So how does the app boot? All of these tiny details. How does the menu work? More from a UI perspective, obviously. Some take a long while. You see, they need some time to actually load and to find the GPS signal. I'm not clicking anything. This is sort of the real time, how long it took. So, and I didn't do this by myself. The whole team, everyone at fresk.digital, took time to actually experience all of these different services. And that made it very a fun experience from our team as well. And so my experience was different than someone else's, and that gave some additional perspective, just like the OK zoom out example. So my perspective is different than someone else's. And of course, the blue bike experience. So it's kind of strange because they have this kiosk thing where you can get the key out of there. Yeah, it's not ideal yet, but that's the work we are doing to optimize that. But we needed to obviously experience this as well to really get the right context. So we mapped that out in a big Excel type of thing. And then after the last phase of the research, and that's I think where the true goal is. This is to map out all of that research using that questionnaire, and then in the mapping, and eventually in the framework I'll show you in a minute, to define the design areas and also do additional validation, because there were some findings, and we could say, well, is it just me, or we had some suggestions, but maybe check that with some more people if this is a true nice UX suggestion for this case. So we did additional validation as an addition upon our own research. Again, the research framework. And what we did is we mapped the customer journey, which digital touch points were in there. And we had, in this conclude section, we had discussions on, okay, what would the backstage processes look like? And for that, we did some additional desk research as well, and identified what possible data dependencies there were. And we did this for Blue Bike, but again, we did this for more of all of these services we just mentioned. And well, that created a nice insight, in a way, sort of a perspective zoomed out of all of these shared mobility services. And in that way, we could identify the design areas that are crucial for the improvement of the Blue Bike experience. So the finding for shared mobility in general were these. But again, this is generic for all shared mobility. And in the context of Blue Bike, we found that onboarding and payment were the most crucial ones to zoom into. And from here, we mapped out this experience, and we used, well, the framework as our tool, and then created these experience maps that has the different perspectives that I listed earlier. So again, the before, the during, and the after. So from here, we created a number of UX suggestions, and these were fed by the experiences we had elsewhere. So for instance, this is the registration part, but we found out that if you would use the HTM experience, that is somewhat similar and would be so far easier for Blue Bike to incorporate something that fits, is in the line of that ATM example. Another one was on simplified payment, because you can see you can have a bike with a smart lock and a bike with a key lock. And well, if this is your first experience, it's very hard to identify which is which, and you don't really care. Just make it. I want to grab a bike, and PayPal or credit card would be very easy. But in the Blue Bike situation, you had to get a card by post. Well, that didn't work that good. Tier does it very, very good. So this was a suggestion. Look at the tier process, and you can learn a lot from that. So the battery indication, this was especially from a electrified shared mobility perspective. So you could see where the bikes are, but you don't see exactly what the availability is or what the battery charge is. And if you want to rent a bike and see where they're at, you obviously need to have a bike with enough juice in it. So Bondi does that in a good way. And this is the last example. So you only should show hubs with availability. Now they show everything, and you could click on one of these items, and then you see, okay, well, there's no bike here. But yeah, as a user, you don't have a need for that specific information, because you can return it anywhere. So, and Go Sharing does that a whole lot better. So wrapping up, the whole idea of this talk is to motivate you to take a step back before moving forward. Because do the research, zoom out, and not just look at your own client, but maybe look in the whole domain that you are working in, because that will give you additional information to create work that is truly meaningful. So then back to the title of this talk. This Kendrick Scott is a part of the Kendrick Scott Oracle, and while he was struggling creating this new album, he sort of turned that around. He looked at that map around him, and actually he used that to create that new album. That box opened up for him, and he created an album named A Wall Becomes a Bridge, because all of these boundaries, he used that as inspiration in all of his track numbers. He sort of, his emotion that he had with all of these restrictions from a record company and all of that, he sort of translated that in a musical way, and that created, I think, a terrific album. So go and listen to it. One more remark. If you would like to have this framework, if you find it interesting, look me up, or you can use the QR code to download the framework. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Paul. While we are waiting for some questions, I'll refresh the Menti code in case you still need it. I'm really curious. So you shared with us this framework, and I'm curious on how does that help your communication with your clients? The Blue Bike. So how did this made that connection in any way different?
Well, anyway, it's you become thought leader on a certain topic, and your client finds that truly inspiring because they're dealing with someone at the other end of the table that knows their shit, right? It's and that I think you don't have to make up certain stories. You have to experience all of these different shared mobility instances in this way. The client really appreciates all the effort you put in.
And I guess also your team. So you got to go outside, I guess, and be really experience the real thing. How was the reaction to the team to that? Like I can imagine that can make it really fun.
That's awesome. So one of the fun parts of this work is that you actually get to experience it. If you obviously need to zoom out and do that, organize that yourself. But I'm always feel like some kind of an actor in a way. So you would have a new movie role, and in order to do that, you have to really experience. You have to dive into that character. You have to be that character and really understand it. And this is the same here. So I cannot work on shared mobility if I don't truly understand it. And I like that. So you get to know all of these different domains and become sort of a mini expert on that.
I think designers end up being a little experts on a lot of different things, and getting to experience it is really important.
And maybe reuse it as well so what you have learned on shared mobility. Not everything is reusable, but over time you can sort of build on that experience. It's nice.
Yeah, nice. We do have one question now from our audience. Have you ever experienced a moment that you don't have any ideas that solves the given problem in a way that you are satisfied with? Maybe let's rephrase it a bit. That you don't have any ideas on how to approach it, and in a way it helps you solving it. I would say this framework, perhaps.
Well, the framework leads you to design areas. So, and not every one of these areas are relevant, or should be. These design areas should be prioritized. So, and I think if you don't have a clear idea or you don't have a solution that you are satisfied with, probably there's something wrong with it. Either it needs more research, or maybe you should focus on one of the other design areas, because if you have a better feeling, and obviously this is a client thing as well. If it doesn't feel good, then I wouldn't go for that, I think.
Okay. Makes sense. And what was the wall you turned into a bridge in the mobility project? Like challenges when approaching this Blue Bike project?
Well, not the challenge. The actual sort of the turning a wall into a bridge was more that sort of the not knowing enough of the context of Blue Bike. We weren't able to give good advice if you wouldn't have zoomed out and also experienced overfeeds or other shared mobility offerings. So in that way, that was sort of our wall of not knowing it, and we sort of zoomed out. Okay, what are relevant competitors in a way, and what are they doing, and then reusing or getting inspired.
And you mentioned that the Blue Bikes are a product mostly in the Belgium market, if I understood you correctly. As a global designer, I'm actually really curious on how did you address that it's not the country where you are located, right? So did you go to Belgium? How did that part go?
And it's funny because in the Netherlands, if you have a sort of a basket on your bike, that's a really people don't like that.
They don't like that.
They don't like that. But when you interview people in Belgium for using a Blue Bike, then it's a must. So you must have the basket there. We think it looks silly, but they have find true value in that. Wow. So there are a lot of nuances there, and that's very interesting to notice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I think I would be really happy in Belgium because I love my basket in my bike, I have to say. But okay, so when do you decide you have learned enough? So when you stop researching, because it's really important to do this research part. We can get so much out of it, but when would be the right moment to, capture it and move on to the next stage?
I think the framework in a way has helped you with that. So it has sort of empty spots when you sort of fill in all of these different experiences. And it was quite abstract, but you can imagine if you would have this journey plotted out, and there are gaps, and these gaps are become evident because other companies do have a certain means of filling in a certain phase in that customer life cycle. So you should keep going until you have the feeling, okay, well, this is just for that specific service, and that's that. And also there's a sort of a warning there, because the research is to identify the design areas and then come up with relevant solutions. So the whole research itself is not a goal. It's sort of to zoom out and have the right solution derived from that.
Yeah.
So you should stop researching if you have enough answers, I guess.
Right,
Yeah.
and many more questions for later
Yeah,
on.
you
I
can
guess.
keep on doing research.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. That's right. And one more question. Very often designers receive requirements to just execute on timelines and budgets. Any tips on making clients or stakeholders zooming out?
Show them the framework. At least that's what we do. So show them how sort of their service maps on other services, and that often inspires them to create a valuable solution. So it's not just about the quick wins. This is more on, okay, what brings true value. So you need to do the research, and often when you bring that story, clients do understand that.
Okay, nice. Nice clients. And now a question more on on your team, actually. What kind of profiles are there in your team? And do you have a multidisciplinary team? I can imagine research would be maybe a profile you have.
I could talk hours on this topic, but I come from a company that has the sort of more sections. So you would have a separate visual design, separate interaction design, a separate front end. But over time, and since I'm now sort of one of the founders of a very small company, I've now find that this role should be a little bit broader. So I guess it's very much dependent on what type of company you work at. So at the moment, we are looking for someone with a more broader skill set, and I wouldn't hire someone right now that is just a researcher.
Okay.
Because we use research to create a better design. And I think in the size of the company that we are now, it's important that is the same person. Yeah.
All right.
But maybe over time, if we are twice or 3 times as big, it might differ. But I think the size of the company is
It matters in this case. Yeah, clear. So we still have some time for extra questions. I don't know if anyone in the audience would like to actually take the mic to ask any questions. No? Then otherwise, then we move on. Thank you so much, Paul, for your presentation.
Thank you, my pleasure.
A round of applause.